The sound of Ron Murphy's hand meeting Carrie Stutzman's face cut the ballroom in half. Music strangled, glass chimed. 100 phones rose like shields. She didn't blink. He didn't realize whose mother he'd just touched. Carrie didn't sway. Arms folded. Chin level. The kind of stillness you only learn in uniform or under fire. A cluster of guests instinctively raised their phones. A few murmured, "Hey," and "Sir." But the room kept its distance, like a tide that didn't dare come back in. To the cameras, it was a simple picture, a furious man barking over a gray-haired woman in a cardigan. What the cameras didn't know, yet, was that the woman once wore a Marine insignia on her shoulder, and that the most important contact in her phone reads, "Shannon Wade, DHS." Ron was still talking, cheeks flushed bourbon red. "People like you don't get to—" Carrie's voice was low enough to calm a storm. "You've just made the worst mistake of your week. Possibly your year." A dozen lenses kept rolling. Somewhere, a notification whistle pinged. Nothing about the next 24 hours would be quiet. One call. That's all it would take. Not for special treatment, but to ensure what happened beneath the flowers and crystal tonight would not be buried under them tomorrow. The clip would travel, and the truth with it. Before we continue, click subscribe, like this video, and tell me in the comments where you're watching from. Your support helps us bring more captivating stories, and trust me, you won't want to miss them. 45 minutes earlier. The Hyatt's grand room glowed warm as a sunrise. White linen, gold chargers, arches threaded with roses. A slide deck looped photos of veterans receiving keys to newly renovated apartments. The donor wall gleamed. The press table humored small talk. Carrie Stutzman arrived alone, early as always. Navy sweater buttoned neatly over a light blue check, the small Marine Corps pin at her collar polished to a quiet shine. She paused by the memorial display, traced a name with her eyes, and took a seat near the front. Close enough to hear the speeches, but far enough that no one would fuss over her. Across the room, Ron Murphy held court at the sponsor table, sleeves tight over gym-built forearms, hat still on indoors, voice carrying. He slapped backs, boasted about his redevelopment contract, cleaning up the city's rough edges, and laughed in a way that didn't invite anyone else to laugh with him. Event planner Lydia Keene moved like a metronome through the tables, headset murmuring, smile fixed. When she reached Carrie, it softened into real warmth. "We're presenting your mentorship plaque right after the mayor's remarks," she said. "You okay being up front?" "I've stood in worse spots," Carrie said, which Lydia somehow understood as yes. On the far wall, a discreet dome camera watched the room. 2 caterers compared phones, one already on a private stream for the foundation's socials. A councilman rehearsed his lines. A councilwoman rehearsed her smile. Carrie's phone buzzed. "Shannon, proud of you. Watching the feed between meetings. Text me when you're home." Carrie typed back. "Be good. Breathe between briefings." "Who's the VIP in the sweater?" Ron asked a friend, loud enough to skim across linen. "Looks like seating got creative tonight." "Veteran honoree," the friend muttered. "Big mentor in the community." Ron's eyes slid from the front table to the donor list. "Optics," he said, as if it were a bad word. "They keep forgetting who pays for these evenings." The first speech praised partnership, the second praised efficiency. When the slideshow reached the section on veteran housing, Carrie's hands folded over her program, thumbs aligning the edge. The photos were pretty. Pretty doesn't keep anyone warm. A guest at Ron's table asked whether his company hired vets. Ron grinned. "We hire whoever fits the culture, not a charity." The grin widened when he noticed Carrie looking over. Just noticing, not judging. It was enough. He stood. He wanted her to hear him. "Some folks mistake gratitude for entitlement," he said. "To no one and everyone." A few heads turned, then turned away. Lydia's headset crackled. She clocked the posture, the angle of his shoulders, the drag line of his mouth, and adjusted course toward them. But a caterer snagged her with a tray emergency. The band shifted to something softer. A server refilled water glasses. The mayor's aide cued a "Welcome our honored guests" slide. Ron stepped into the aisle, toward the front row, presenting power like a business card. "Ma'am," he said, smile tight as wire, "VIP seating is reserved." Carrie didn't unfold her arms. "I'm exactly where they asked me to be." He leaned in. "Well, I'm asking you to move." Behind him, two women noticed and stopped mid-conversation. A young man at a side table thumbed his camera app open. Carrie's gaze flicked once to the exits, a habit from long ago, and settled back on the only exit that mattered, the one in Ron's pride. "Respect," she said evenly, "doesn't cost a seat." Something in him broke toward the easy path. He took it, and the ballroom, for one suspended second, forgot how to breathe. The band found its rhythm again, but the room didn't. Conversations restarted in fragments, edges still sharp. Carrie remained where she was, shoulders drawn into the calm that always came before weather. "Ms. Stutzman?" A woman with a headset and the posture of a metronome appeared at her elbow. "Lydia Keene, event planner." Up close, Lydia's practiced smile faltered into something genuine. "I saw how you handled that moment, like you've handled worse." "Most storms pass," Carrie said. Lydia followed her gaze to the memorial display by the stage, the framed photos, the folded flags, the names. "My brother," she said softly, "I planned these things because I can't stand doing nothing." Carrie nodded once. Doing something is better. They stood there a breath longer than strangers usually do. Lydia checked her tablet. "You'll be presented right after the mayor. If anyone gives you trouble about seating, you send them to me." She leaned in. "I mean it." Across the room, a laugh rose too loud for satin. Ron Murphy's laugh. He sat with his donors like a captain on the wrong ship, shoulders squared, cap still on indoors because rules were for other people. He pointed at the projector as the diversity reel played. Military families, renovated apartments, ribbon cuttings, and made a comment that earned uneasy smiles. Lydia's smile disappeared altogether. "I need to fix the lighting for the plaque handoff," she said, "but it sounded like I'll keep an eye on him." Carrie's phone buzzed. "Shannon. Proud of you, Mom. Watching live stream. Knock 'em dead." Carrie's mouth softened. She replied, "Breathe between briefings." What she didn't see, 3 floors up, in a secured room off a federal building, a monitor labeled ATL Vets Gala, Foundation Feed. Text logged timestamps. A supervisor asked casually, "That's Wade's mother, right?" And the room adjusted its posture without saying so. On the floor, the mayor's aide mouthed 2 minutes to the band leader. Champagne moved like a second tide. Table cards were adjusted by imperceptible degrees. The dome camera in the corner watched it all with tireless patience. Ron grew louder. "Look at that. Another glossy video about handouts." His voice carried with the practiced projection of someone used to rooms bending. "You want gratitude? Make them work for it." A man at his table cleared his throat. Ron, what? I fund this thing. I get to have an opinion. Carrie turned her head just enough to show she'd heard. Not a challenge. A note. Scene. Lydia reappeared, tension tucked behind the headset. He's been spirited since the donor dinner, she said, keeping her tone neutral. Try not to let him ruin your evening. He doesn't have that power, Carrie said. Right. Lydia took that in like medicine. 10 minutes. I'll fetch you. The reel switched from ribbon cuttings to interviews. A young Marine described sleeping in his car before a foundation referral. A widow talked about paperwork mazes. Carrie felt the old ache press behind her ribs. The pictures were true. The pretty of it wasn't the point. Ron stood. The motion rippled attention through nearby tables. The band slid into something soft. The room's volume dipped obediently. Carrie's eyes lowered to her program. The corner of the paper aligned neatly with the charger plate. Habit. Excuse me, Ron said as he approached, smile stretched thin as fishing line. He stopped just inside her space, like he had bought the air. VIP seats are reserved. I'm exactly where they asked me to be, Carrie said. He assessed the cardigan, the clean lines of a life lived precisely. He saw an opening where there wasn't one. Let me help you find your assigned spot. Thank you for the offer. She didn't move. Behind him, the councilwoman stopped pretending to field a call. The councilman pretended to check his watch. Two young guests lifted their phones with the guilty hope that comes before any viral moment. Lydia spotted the triangle of bodies forming and began cutting through tables. Ron dropped the smile. Let me be plain. My guests are arriving. And I'm an invited guest, Carrie said, with a plaque to collect. So you expect a handout, he said, quick and quiet, a blade. Carrie's jaw flexed once, then stilled. It isn't a handout when you've already paid for it. That drew a small, involuntary sound from someone behind them. Not a laugh. A yes. Ron glanced around, measuring witnesses. The projector popped into a section on veteran housing initiatives. The microphone on the podium caught a feedback squeal as a volunteer tested it, sharp enough to turn heads. Glasses chimed. The band faltered. The moment widened. Culture fit, Ron said, louder now, performing for the room that hadn't asked for a show. That's what my company believes. Earn your place. From somewhere near the stage, the mayor's aide whispered urgently to a stagehand, Turn the podium off, now. Lydia arrived at Carrie's side. Mr. Murphy, I need you to return to your table, she said, voice low and professional. We're about to begin. Ron looked past her like she was furniture. This isn't about the program, he said. It's about order. Order, Carrie repeated, not unkindly, as if trying on the word. I remember what that used to mean. He took a half step closer. The space between them became a demand. Carrie's right hand drifted to the handle of her cane, not lifting it, just touching it. Somewhere in her muscle memory, a different corridor, a different night, a different man saying something cruel. She breathed once. Ma'am, Lydia tried again, to Carrie this time. If you'd like, we can… I'm fine, Carrie said. Ron's lip curled. You people, Mr. Murphy. Lydia's voice cut. Enough. The microphone whined again, another squeal that made the chandelier tremble in the reflections. Entire tables turned. The world narrowed to a little ring of carpet, and the four of them standing on it. Carrie's phone buzzed in her cardigan pocket. She didn't look. She already knew who it was. The text said, Almost your turn. Stand tall, Mom. but her eyes were level on the man who needed her to be smaller. "You won't be on this stage," Ron said, not realizing the camera behind him recorded his mouth forming each word. "Not while I'm—" "Ron!" someone hissed from his table. "Sit down." He didn't. He reached, palm opening in a gesture that was meant to herd. Carrie didn't back up. Her hand closed around the cane's handle, not to raise it, not to strike, simply to anchor her to the floor that belonged to her as much as to anyone. "Respect," she said, the word even and unbreakable. "Try it." The last thing anyone heard before the sound drained out of the room was the delicate tap of a champagne flute settling on glass. Then the slap. It cracked once, clean and ugly, and time slipped its gears. The band stopped dead. The projector froze on a smile that no longer fit the air. A woman in mauve put a hand to her mouth and didn't lower it. Carrie did not fall. She turned her face back to center, that same practiced stillness returning, the storm passing over her like it had met a mountain. Silence gathered like a verdict, and in that silence, somewhere deep in her pocket, the phone kept buzzing. The silence fractured into 1,000 sounds at once. Chairs scraping, glass chiming, someone sobbing, the band leader whispering, "Cut, cut." Phones came up like a forest. Alerts began to ping in overlapping waves, the invisible storm front rolling through pockets and purses. Lydia moved first. "Ms. Stutzman, with me," she said, voice steady, hand light on Carrie's elbow. There was a path through the gawking, and Lydia made it, past the mauve dress frozen mid-gasp, past donors who couldn't meet their own eyes in the mirrored walls, past Ron's table where no one dared touch him. They reached the lobby, carpet muted, air cooler, the chandeliers here throwing kinder light. A pair of EMTs hustled from the service corridor with a small kit and the apology of professionals who knew when they were late to a moment. "Ma'am, may we—" "No," Carrie said, gentle but unarguable, and sat on a velvet sofa like it had been waiting for her all evening. She dabbed her cheek with a folded napkin Lydia pressed into her hand. A bloom of pink disappeared into white linen. "Just ice," Carrie added after a beat. "For swelling, not for show." The EMT nodded, grateful for the clarity, and went to fetch a pack without fuss. Lydia lowered onto the opposite cushion, headset quiet for once. "I'm so sorry," she said. "We should have—" "You did fine," Carrie said, because apology had its uses and its limits. "How long until someone uploads it?" As if on cue, the first phone in the lobby emitted the little trill of a breaking news banner. Another phone chimed, then another. Lydia glanced at her tablet and blanched. "Hashtag veteran assaulted at gala," she read. "Oh." She looked up, eyes finding Carrie's with a kind of awe. "It's trending." 20 minutes, Carrie murmured. "That's fast." Inside the ballroom, Ron's voice tried on reason the way a bad actor tries on accents. "It was a misunderstanding," he told a table of donors, hands open, chin performing regret. "I was guiding her away from the aisle. She stumbled. Camera angles. Look, people see what they want." "Then why's my face burning?" a woman near the door muttered, and someone snorted into a napkin. Ron's PR man materialized, hair perfect, smile unconvincing. "We issue a statement," he said softly. "Stress confusion. Praise her service. Emphasize donations." "Do it," Ron said, jaw pulsing. "Now." The statement posted. It did not land. 3 minutes later, a clip from the event's live stream hit a popular local account. Crisp 4K, clean audio. The slap, a terrible metronome. You could see the microsecond before the hand rose, the flinch that didn't happen. The set of Carrie's mouth. The way dignity can be a wall when no other one is available. Comments exploded. Shares multiplied like rumors. Across town, bartenders turned TVs to the local feed. Across the country, night shift nurses watched on break rooms' glowing screens. In a secure room in D.C., a technician pushed his glasses up and said, "Isn't that—" By the time the ice pack reached Carrie's palm, a young reporter in glitter-sensible heels skidded to the threshold of the lobby, breathless. "Ms. Stutzman, Carrie, can you comment?" Lydia rose to block, gentle but immovable. "She's not—" "It's fine," Carrie said without standing. The reporter held a mic, but kept at respectful distance. Two cameras leaned in, their little red eyes bright with hunger. "Your response to Mr. Murphy's statement that this was a misunderstanding?" the reporter asked. Carrie tilted the pack against her cheek. The sting was clean and honest. "I've seen worse in combat," she said. "But this was uglier." The quote flew. It perched on Chiron banners and captions and tweets, the kind of sentence that fits exactly into the space people save for truth. By sundown, vans painted in station colors idled on her street. By 9, a satellite truck's dish raised over her mailbox like some strange mechanical sunflower. Carrie's porch light stayed off. The blinds stayed half open. A neighbor placed a thermos of tea on the stoop and left without ringing. Back at the Hyatt, security escorted Ron out a side door while his PR man repeated, "No further comment," like a mantra you don't quite believe. The corridor smelled of lemon cleaner and cold anxiety. In a quiet black SUV, Ron's phone buzzed with texts that began with, "We'll get through this," and ended with, "Damage containment." He scrolled, jaw set. "We sue," he said to the PR man. "Defamation, harassment, we'll bury her in paper." The PR man didn't answer. He'd just opened an article connecting Ron's newest city contract to a foundation board member seated 2 tables from the stage. He pinched the bridge of his nose. "We should find out who she is," he said carefully, "beyond the program." "An old Marine," Ron said. "A prop they brought up front." The PR man typed, "Carrie Stutzman," into a search bar, then clicked another result, then another. Then he swallowed. "You should see this." Ron read once, then twice. His mouth made a shape and didn't finish it. "Director Wade," he said at last. "Of Homeland Security?" The PR man met his eyes, sympathy briefly human. "You hit the wrong woman, Ron. You hit America's mother." 3 time zones away, the Situation Room wasn't built for family. It made a new category anyway. Shannon Wade walked in with a folder closed, and her face more closed. Advisors murmured about an international alert. A staffer hurried over with something different. "Director Wade," he said. "Ma'am, this just crossed the president's desk." On the main screen, the gala video looped. The approach, the tilt of Ron's shoulder, the slap landing with that awful clarity you only get when the room is well mic'd. Shannon didn't blink. The first time through, she watched her mother's jaw. The second time, the stillness. The third, the angle of the hand and the faces around them. Who flinched, who filmed, who froze. The president entered like weather changing, quiet, decisive. Anyone in the room adjusting without permission. She took Shannon's elbow, the human gesture allowed behind closed doors. "Is this—" "My mother," Shannon said, voice level because the floor required it. Yes, a legal counsel spoke from the corner. Conflict protocols are clear, Director. Recusal from any DHS involvement. We can coordinate with DOJ for independent review. I'll recuse, Shannon said, and I expect you to be twice as transparent as you were 5 minutes ago. A tech, forgetting himself, said, Ma'am, she didn't, and couldn't find the word for not flinching. Shannon found it for him. Break, she said. She didn't break. Her phone vibrated. A text from an unsaved number. We're outside your mother's home. Press heavy. We'll keep the sidewalk clear. She didn't reply. She watched the clip a fourth time, counting heartbeats. Then she closed the folder she hadn't opened. Handle the security perimeter around the house, she said. No special treatment, just safety. And someone make sure she has tea. Yes, ma'am, 3 people said at once. And for the record, the president added quietly, the country is seeing what you've seen your whole life. What's that? Shannon asked. Dignity, the president said, under fire. At Carrie's porch, microphones sprouted like weeds. Reporters pleaded for updates. A woman with a laminated badge pressed close. Ms. Stutzman, will you press charges? Do you want Mr. Murphy arrested? Carrie opened the door only as far as the chain allowed. The porch light turned the bruising at her cheek the color of early plums. I want the truth to do what it does, she said. And I want people to remember what respect is worth. The chain slid back. The door closed. Inside, the kettle began to hum. On a highway ramp leaving the Hyatt, the SUV's radio reported the trending tag. Ron stared through the windshield like it was a screen he could turn off. Director Wade, he said again, the title a weight he couldn't lift. Of Homeland Security. Neither the PR man nor the driver answered. The road unspooled into a night that was no longer on his side. By morning, the government had put clean lines around a messy thing. A memo with 3 signatures, White House counsel, DHS ethics, DOJ liaison, landed in inboxes with the gravity of a gavel. Director Wade, recused. Department of Justice, independent review opened. Local PD, instructed to preserve all materials. No spin, no favor. Procedure as ballast. Shannon read the memo twice, then forwarded it to herself anyway, like you do with things you want to believe will hold. She closed her office door, placed both palms on the desk, and counted the seconds it took for her pulse to slow. When she emerged, the door wasn't just shut. It was a line she refused to cross. Anything involving the gala, route to DOJ, she told her staff. If it touches me, it's not ours. The televisions along the corridor didn't obey jurisdiction. Every screen ran the same loop, the slap, the stillness, the quote. An anchor repeated it like creed. Respect isn't a favor, it's a right. Journalists work like ants when sugar has split. By noon, the first long read hit the local paper's site. Who is Ron Murphy? A past unspooled, racial discrimination complaints filed by workers and settled in quiet conference rooms. OSHA citations that never made the 6 o'clock news. A curious pattern of backdoor meetings at City Hall on days when contracts were scored. City officials called them coincidences. Reporters called them breadcrumbs. Readers called them exactly what they looked like. A second piece followed. Hired, fired, silenced. Minority foreman describing culture fit evaluations delivered with a smile and a severance check. Old texts surfaced from a company's Slack, jokes that weren't jokes, policies disguised as pep talks. The mayor's office responded with the stiffness of a suit left too long on a hanger. We condemn violence in all forms. Any suggestions of impropriety are politically motivated. An hour later, a photo from last spring resurfaced. The mayor on a dais, Ron at his elbow, a ribbon stretched between them like a promise they both intended to break. Back at the Hyatt, Lydia Keene pressed send before her courage ran out. The screenshots went to 3 journalists and 1 advocacy attorney. Her message was brief. I can't keep this and call it professionalism. I'm sorry I waited. The texts were clear. Ron to Lydia, 2 days before the event. Keep the old vet out of the front rows. Optics matter. And later, after seating charts were finalized, put donors where cameras find them. We're not running a soup kitchen. When the screenshots hit the feeds, the public didn't parse them. They inhaled them. Comment threads flared bright. Calls to the foundation jammed the switchboard. A boycott list began to circulate. Companies still on Ron's client roster. By evening, 2 had issued statements reconsidering partnerships. A third quietly deleted a page from its website. Carrie didn't read any of it. She brewed tea, set out a plate of cornbread for the neighbors who kept showing up with casseroles and flowers, and answered her phone when it mattered. "Mom," Shannon said, voice wrapped in control, "DOJ's taking point. I'm out of it. I have to be." "You're protecting your work," Carrie said. "I raised you to protect what's yours." "It's not enough," Shannon admitted, a truth stripped of title. "I want to do more." "Don't," Carrie said, kind but iron. "Just make sure it's fair." On a cable roundtable, a host ran the clip again and asked a half-circle of pundits to weigh in on civility. A veteran in a crisp blazer cut through the noise. "We're not debating tone," she said. "We're deciding whether dignity is negotiable. Ms. Stutzman already told you, respect isn't a favor. It's a right." The line traveled farther this time, into classrooms and union halls and group chats that had been quiet for months. The hashtag Stutzman Standard appeared beneath photos of people standing their ground in small and large ways, a teacher refusing to expel a kid for speaking his first language, a nurse advocating for a patient without family, a clerk pushing back on a manager who wanted a certain kind of applicant binned. Power hates sunlight. It also hates subpoenas. The city's IT director, who'd never expected to be famous, stared at his monitor as directories blinked out like dying stars. "Server outage," he said, too loudly, to a room that pretended it believed him. "Coincidence. Timing." "What exactly is down?" the deputy city attorney asked, taking notes that didn't want to exist. The director's cursor hovered over an error log that told the truth in plain text. "Manual deletion, elevated privileges, remote session." "Archives," he said. "Audits, procurement emails. But we've got backups." When he reached for them, those too were gone. Someone had remembered to take out the trash all the way to the curb. Across town, at a different screen in a higher building, a DOJ analyst compared timestamps with a face that did not do surprise. "The crash started 6 minutes after our preservation letter hit," she said to her supervisor. "They didn't even wait for lunch." "Get warrants," the supervisor said, "and call your favorite forensics gremlin." "Marcus?" the analyst asked. "Marcus." Ron's house was quieter than he liked it. The PR man sat at the breakfast bar, legal pads fanned like options. "We need a stopgap message," he said, trying to sound like a future existed. Something contrite, without admitting fault. Ron scrolled his phone the way a man scrolls his future. The trending topics were an indictment in font. Stutzman. Respect isn't a favor. Optics matter. His thumb hesitated over a text from the mayor. Call me on signal. He slid past it. My donors will hold, he muttered, a bid masquerading as certainty. They always do. Some will, the PR man said, careful with the word some. But DOJ is in. If there's anything with signatures, there isn't, Ron said too quickly. The PR man set his pen down. Then we'll act like that's true. At dusk, Lydia walked the Hyatt's empty ballroom with a clipboard she didn't need. Staff had cleared the glass, rolled the linen, vacuumed the glitter, only glitter can leave. She stood beneath the arch of roses where the slideshow had paused mid-smile and closed her eyes. Her phone buzzed. A blocked number. Ms. Keene, a voice said, professional, female. This is Special Agent Carter with the Department of Justice. We received the messages you forwarded. We'll need a statement. I'll give one, Lydia said. And names. Ms. Keene, the agent added softer. You did the right thing. Lydia didn't feel like a hero. She felt like a woman who'd spent years moving chairs around bad men and finally picked one up and threw it. Carrie's porch became a checkpoint for casseroles and kindness. The streetlights hummed. Crickets made their case for continuance. Inside, the TV murmured without taking over the room. Neighbors came and went, leaving what comfort they had. A young reporter who'd learned to knock softly asked from the steps, "Do you have a message for Mr. Murphy tonight?" Carrie opened the door. No chain this time. The bruise on her cheek had settled into its second-day colors, the kind that say this happened and we are healing anyway. My message is for the people watching him, she said. The ones deciding who belongs in front rows. The ones pressing delete. You can erase files. You can't erase what everybody saw. Ms. Stutzman, the reporter asked, are you afraid? Carrie considered the street, the sky. The faces turned toward her because they wanted to be braver by proximity. Fear's a tool, she said. It's not a home. The reporter wrote it down like a prayer. Down the block, an unmarked sedan idled. The driver spoke into his collar mic. Perimeter calm. He did not add, and holding. In the DOJ war room, the analyst's favorite gremlin walked in wearing a hoodie that said, Artifacts don't lie. Marcus Darnell dropped into a chair and cracked his knuckles over a keyboard that had seen 1,000 recoveries. They nuked local and off-site, the analyst said. Marcus grinned without humor. And they forgot about the cloud they don't pay for. He tapped a key. Shadow sync, 30-minute intervals. On the monitor, directories began to repopulate themselves like a forest after rain. Start with procurement, the supervisor said. And the mayor, the analyst added. Marcus nodded. You'll have your ghosts by morning. Outside, the city's skyline kept its own council. Inside, the empire that had mistaken darkness for cover realized, too late, that dawn was a kind of evidence. And in a small house on a quiet street, Carrie turned off the porch light and left the kettle filled for morning. Morning came in quiet layers. Mail trucks, sparrows, a kettle beginning to murmur. In the DOJ lab, the only sound was keys. Marcus Darnell, left leg steel from the knee down, right hand missing 2 fingertips that never slowed him, leaned into the screen. He wore the same hoodie as the night before. Artifacts don't lie. On a second monitor, directories he'd resurrected from Shadow Sync rebuilt themselves line by line. Procurement, change orders, personal folders with innocuous names that held anything but. There, he said, tapping an entry. Murphy Dev, internal, weekly summaries. Agent Carter stood behind him with coffee that had cooled past usefulness. Open it. Marcus did. A neat thread spilled out. Pilot block, phase budget variance. Replies came from 4 addresses: Ron's COO, a city procurement officer, a deputy in the mayor's office, and a consultant who billed by the euphemism. The language was careful and damning. Reallocate Delta to community engagement deliverables. Understood. Veteran housing carve-out absorbed. Keep public spreadsheet static until ribbon cut. Static, Marcus said, means lie. He pivoted to another folder. Invoices labeled temporary security. Matched payments routed through a nonprofit that existed mostly on letterhead. The nonprofit's board? 2 cousins of a councilman, a golfing buddy of Ron, and a vacant seat mysteriously counted for quorum. Follow the approvals, Marcus murmured. He mapped them with a few deft drags. Names linked to signatures. Signatures to meeting minutes that never happened. Minutes to wire confirmations at hours when honest offices sleep. Agent Carter exhaled. Get me printouts for subpoenas, and a clean deck for the U.S. Attorney. Marcus nodded. And Agent? There's something else. He opened a social media cache, private messages scraped from a group Ron thought was private. Optics volunteers, coordinating comment floods, shaping the narrative under local news posts, flagging anyone who defended Carrie for platform review. The timing matched the crash that killed city servers. Coordinated harassment, Carter said. We'll bundle it. Carrie's phone rang at 8:03 a.m., then 8:11, then 8:14, unknown numbers with the same voice wearing different masks. Drop it, old woman. You'll ruin people. Be smart. Let it go. Veterans don't whine. She set the phone face down on the counter and poured tea. Outside, a car rolled by a little too slowly. The porch light, left on from habit, made daytime look like it was still thinking. At 9:20, the first egg hit her siding. At 9:24, the second. At 9:26, a spray can hissed a lie in red letters across her garage. Liar. Carrie stood on the walkway and looked at the word like it was a stranger who'd wandered onto her property. She didn't pick up the hose. She didn't take a picture. She let it sit where cowardice had put it. By noon, the word had neighbors. Mrs. Alvarez from 2 doors down arrived with a rag and a bucket. I have grandsons, she said, as if that were credentials. Mr. Patel brought a ladder. A teenage kid Carrie didn't know placed 3 candles on the porch and lit them, one by one, the way people do when they don't yet have language for solidarity. Someone posted a photo. Carrie in the doorway, candles glowing at her feet. The red slur refusing to define the frame. The caption read simply, "We know who tells the truth." More candles appeared by dinner. Some melted to glass. Others burned down to little puddles that looked, from the street, like stars had come to rest there. Town Hall announced an open forum to address community concerns. It was a Tuesday, the kind of day bureaucracies use like a muffler. It didn't work. The chamber filled in 8 minutes. Hand-lettered signs rose from the middle rows. Dignity never dies. Vets deserve better. Respect isn't a favor. People who didn't usually sit next to each other sat next to each other. Carrie walked in without fanfare and took an aisle seat. Lydia slid in on her right, hair pulled back, the headset gone. On Carrie's left, a man in a VA jacket squeezed her hand and said, "You don't know me, but you kept me sober today." A deputy mayor offered platitudes into the microphone. They hit the room like damp leaves. From the back, a woman asked if the city had received a preservation letter from DOJ. The deputy mayor said yes, and then said the crash was unfortunate, and then said they were cooperating fully. "Including with the cloud backups?" someone shouted. Silence. The microphone crackled. "We will address technical—" "You'll address the truth," Lydia said, standing. She didn't raise her voice. She didn't need to. "And the texts I sent to the press, and the seating instructions that said, 'Keep the old vet out of the front rows. Optics matter.'" The chamber moved as one entity, turning, focusing, refusing to look away. The deputy mayor tried to gavel composure back into existence. It didn't return. Carrie stayed seated. She wasn't the story. She'd done her part. She'd endured. She'd told the truth once, and she'd decided, deliberately, to let the facts walk on their own legs. Reporters pivoted their cameras anyway. "Ms. Stutzman, will you comment?" one called. Carrie shook her head. "Not tonight." Her silence did what her words had done. It set a line. It insisted on gravity. It made the room interrogate itself. Federal agents did not announce themselves. They moved like a weather change, papers served, hard drives boxed, city emails suspended with a polite message about maintenance. Subpoenas landed with the thud of accountability. A procurement officer who had never before used the phrase, "on advice of counsel," used it 3 times before lunch. In a private Slack, Ron's allies noticed channels vanish beneath their fingers. A consultant texted, "Delete everything." He hit send and watched the bubble fail to deliver. Panic was not a sound, it was a timing. Meetings moved, then disappeared. Friendships shortened into handshakes that didn't linger. The mayor's scheduler canceled a golf tournament out of respect for recent events. The press office added 2 new people and spoke half as much. At Ron's house, the garage door looked like Carrie's, red letters, same hand. The PR man stared at it, then at Ron. "This," he said, resigned, "is the part where even your friends stop calling." Ron's reply died under a knock. 2 agents on the porch, credentials open like exact math. "Mr. Murphy, we have a warrant." Shannon stood in her office and watched Atlanta on a muted screen. The candles, the town hall, her mother's stillness. A staffer hovered in the doorway with a briefing folder she could have recited blind. "Ma'am," he said, "your 1600 is here." "I'll join them," Shannon said, and didn't move. Her phone buzzed. Unknown. She answered anyway. "Director Wade, this is Special Agent Carter. Your mother's perimeter is holding. We've served initial subpoenas. One more thing. Threats have escalated. We're coordinating with locals, but—" "I understand," Shannon said. "Thank you for keeping me informed within the lines." After the call, she dialed home. Carrie picked up on the second ring. "I see you on the news," Shannon said, and the tiniest smile touched her voice. "Doing nothing. Perfectly." "They don't need me to talk," Carrie said. "They need me to keep standing." "Mom," Shannon ventured, "it could get ugly. The calls, the rumors. Maybe worse." Carrie looked through the front window at the porch, at the little constellation of candles, at Mrs. Alvarez chatting with Mr. Pepe. Patel like this had always been their routine. She listened to the neighborhood breathing. She let the quiet decide the scale of the threat. "Sweetheart," she said, with the fatigue and steel of someone who had kept more than one perimeter in her life. "I've been in war zones. This is just another battlefield." Shannon's breath hitched, once, then filed itself away. "Then I'll do my job," she said, "and you'll do yours." "Good," Carrie said. "That's the deal." They stayed on the line a minute longer without filling it. Outside, another candle joined the others. In the DOJ lab, another folder reappeared. In City Hall, another door closed on a conversation that would not be held off the record again. Night gathered without hurry. The word on Carrie's garage faded under scrub water and neighbor hands. But the stain lingered in a way that proved what everyone already knew. And in the hard drive's returning directories, the ghosts in the data, names arranged themselves into a reckoning. By Thursday, America had given the story a name. Justice for Carrie, burned across timelines in fonts big enough to eclipse everything else. It began with veterans groups, posts from old service buddies and national chapters, all repeating her words. Respect isn't a favor. It's a right. Then came civil rights organizations, their statements threaded with fire and calm. Police unions followed, more careful but still aligned, their press release calling the assault a disgrace to uniform and oath alike. In a matter of days, Carrie Stutzman, the woman who hadn't even wanted to give a statement, became the country's pulse for dignity. Digital firestorm. The hashtags multiplied. #Veterans stand with Carrie. Honor her stillness. The viral photo, Carrie's calm face, Ron's hand mid-air, the chandelier caught in frozen light, was printed on protest signs, on murals, on T-shirts that sold out before sundown. Talk shows replayed the footage like a looped prayer. Commentators argued about civility, but no one could scrub the truth, that the man shouting was the same one whose company had stolen money meant for veteran housing. Ron Murphy tried to fight the tide with noise. Within hours, anonymous accounts began flooding feeds with doctored clips. Carrie's hand digitally raised, her voice edited to sound sharp and angry. A new headline circulated. Retired Marine started it, sources say. It worked for a few hours, then Marcus Darnell dropped the full feed. The security footage, clean and uncut, appeared on DOJ's verified channel. Time-stamped, authenticated, irrefutable. It showed Ron leaning in, sneering, calling her irrelevant, then delivering the slap that split the world in two. The counter-narrative collapsed. A late-night host summed it up best. The only thing she provoked was the truth. The threats. Carrie didn't go online. She didn't need to. The world now arrived at her door. Letters piled up in the mailbox, some with prayers, some with venom. The supportive ones were written in trembling hands, signed by strangers who began their notes with "Dear Ma'am" and ended them with "Semper Fi." But the others? Typed, cold, short. Drop it, or you'll regret it. Stop playing hero. We know where you live. Federal agents posted themselves 2 houses down in an unmarked car. Carrie didn't ask them to. Shannon did. At dusk, a delivery truck slowed outside her home, idling too long. When it pulled away, Carrie stepped onto the porch and found her candle display knocked over. One flame had burned out against the welcome mat. The next morning, the FBI added her address to the protective watch list. Power cut. The night it happened, the air was warm and wrong. Carrie had just finished washing her mug when the lights blinked once, then died. The house sank into blackness. The hum of the fridge stopped. Even the porch candles looked dimmer, their reflections dancing on the window glass. Carrie didn't panic. She moved the way she always had, deliberate, silent, efficient. Her hand found the drawer near the stove. Inside was her old sidearm, cleaned, oiled, and legal. She checked the chamber, sat at the kitchen table, and waited. Outside, a car door clicked. Footsteps on gravel. Then, silence again. The training that never left her clicked in. Inhale, count, exhale. She positioned herself behind the refrigerator, body angled to cover the hallway. The seconds stretched. Then a soft tap on the door. "Federal Protective Service," a voice said, low and steady. "Ms. Stutzman, it's us." Carrie flipped the porch switch out of habit. Nothing. She moved to the door anyway, hand steady, and asked, "Call sign?" "Bluebird," the voice replied. The right answer. She unlocked it. Agent Carter stepped in, flashlight lowered. Behind her, 2 agents swept the perimeter with handheld beams that cut through the dark like clean knives. "Power lines were severed," Carter said. "Deliberate. We've already got the utility company rerouting." Carrie holstered the pistol, but didn't apologize for it. "Old habits," she said. "Good ones," Carter answered. "You did everything right." The agent's radio hissed. "Perimeter secure. Neighbor confirms suspicious vehicle. Dark SUV, no plates." Carter's eyes softened. "They're trying to shake you." Carrie met her gaze. They should have picked someone else. Washington. At that same moment in D.C., Shannon Wade stood before the Attorney General's long oak desk. The room smelled of ink, coffee, and politics. The AG held up a printed dossier. Marcus's findings, Carter's report, the threats. "Director Wade, this situation touches too close to home. We can manage this without your involvement." Shannon's tone was crisp enough to slice through the room's tension. "You can manage the investigation," she said, "but you can't manage me. Your mother's safety is being used to silence what she stood for," Shannon finished. "So let's make this plain." She placed both hands on the folder and pushed it back toward him. "You can intimidate my office, but you won't silence my mother." The AG's jaw tightened. He'd worked with senators, CEOs, and storm systems in human form, but something in her voice rooted him still. "Director, no one is trying to—" Shannon cut him off. "Then prove it. Pursue every lead. Don't flinch. Don't trade justice for headlines." She raised me to believe institutions could hold if people inside them did. He looked at her for a long beat, then nodded. "Understood." As she turned to leave, her phone buzzed. A message from Agent Carter. "Power restored. Subject unharmed." Shannon exhaled once, sharp and quiet, the way soldiers do when the first barrage misses. The morning after. By dawn, the neighborhood buzzed with motion again. Reporters whispering into mics, neighbors bringing batteries and flashlights, children taping "Justice for Carrie" signs to the fence. Someone had cleaned the driveway. Someone else had brewed a second pot of coffee and left it by the stoop. The community had learned its choreography. Carrie stepped outside, mug in hand, and looked at the horizon. The porch light flickered back on, steady this time. Agent Carter stood near the mailbox. "You're trending again," she said. "Looks like half the country's lighting candles tonight." Carrie smiled faintly. "Good. Let them see what light looks like." The agent studied her. "You sure you're okay staying here?" Carrie nodded. "Sweetheart," she said, voice calm and unbroken. "I've been in war zones. This is just another battlefield." Carter didn't argue. Down the street, candles began to flicker alive. Porch by porch, house by house, a chain of quiet defiance against the dark. And somewhere far away, in a windowless office humming with screens, Marcus Darnell scrolled through new data packets, still sinking from the cloud, proof waiting to breathe daylight. "Keep going," he murmured to the files. "We're not done yet." The sun climbed, the lights held, and the movement that bore Carrie's name grew into something that could no longer be switched off. They held the hearing in the big room, the one with the flags in a careful row. Microphones nested like black birds and a ceiling that made voices sound inevitable. Outside, lines wrapped the block. Inside, cameras blinked their little red lights on and did not blink again. Carrie arrived without escort, a navy sweater over a pale blouse, the small marine pin at her collar steady as a compass. She took her seat at the witness table, placed both hands flat, and looked up at the dais as if she were measuring distance, not power. The chair gave the opening. "This is a hearing on the misuse of federal redevelopment funds, retaliatory harassment against witnesses, and the assault of Ms. Carrie Stutzman, a decorated Marine veteran. Witnesses are sworn. Proceedings are televised. We will keep order." A murmur from the gallery settled into silence. The oath was administered. Carrie stood to take it, voice even. When the chair invited an opening statement, she didn't reach for notes. "I don't have a speech," she said. "I have a memory." She let the room hold that for a second. "I remember who taught me to stand still when it mattered. Drill sergeants, NCOs. My mother. I didn't fight for a country that divides its heroes by color. I fought for the right to stand here unbroken." Somewhere in the back, a throat hitched. The stenographer paused a fraction, then kept up. The first counsel began with the gala. He rolled the 4K clip. No edits, no commentary. On the wall screens. You could hear the music drop out, the mic squeal, the crystal chime, then the slap. The gallery didn't gasp this time. They already knew the sound. They watched for what came after. The stillness, the dignity, the refusal to make violence bigger by joining it. "Ms. Stutzman," counsel said, "did you provoke Mr. Murphy?" "No," Carrie said. "Did you strike him, threaten him, raise your voice?" "No." "Why didn't you fight back?" Carrie's look was almost kind. "Sometimes discipline is louder than a punch." The chair nodded to the next panel. Emails appeared on the screens, subject lines clean, language careful. Counsel read them aloud, each line a stone dropped in a clear lake. From Chief Operating Officer, Murphy Development. Pilot block, phase budget variance. Reallocate Delta to community engagement deliverables. Understood. Veteran housing carve-out absorbed. Keep public spreadsheet static until ribbon cut. The chair leaned in. Static means? Frozen, counsel said. A misrepresentation of spend. He advanced a slide. Invoices labeled temporary security, routed through a nonprofit with a board of friends. Another, approval chains matching city officials' names to late-night wire confirmations. Another, a Slack thread titled Optics Volunteers. Coordinating sock puppet accounts to flood comment sections and harass supporters. The gallery began to shift, chairs creaking, hands tightening, breaths not quite as quiet. "Ms. Keene," the chair said, "you sent certain materials to press and authorities?" Lydia Keene stepped up to the witness table, hair pulled back, headset replaced by a small silver cross at her throat. "I did," she said. "I won't pretend I didn't wait too long." Her voice didn't break. It didn't need to. "He told me to keep Ms. Stutzman out of the front rows. Optics matter. That's not event planning. That's erasure." "Did you experience retaliation?" "Anonymous calls, emails. Someone posted my address." She glanced toward Carrie, then back to the dais. "Fear is a tool. I used it wrong for too long. "Thank you, Ms. Keene." Next came Marcus Darnell. Hoodie traded for a suit that still let the hoodie live under it somehow. He introduced himself. Army, signals, disabled veteran, civilian cyber now. His hands hovered over the printed deck like a pianist over keys. "City servers crashed the minute a preservation letter arrived," he said. "Local and off-site backups purged. But there was shadow sync to an unaffiliated cloud. 30-minute intervals." He clicked. Directories repopulated on the screens. Artifacts don't lie. He walked the room through audit logs, timestamps, IP addresses, accounts with elevated privileges. These deletions weren't accidental. Someone drove them, remotely. The same day, a coordinated online disinformation push began, with videos doctored to show Ms. Stutzman initiating aggression. The original livestream contradicts every frame of those edits. A member asked, "Mr. Darnell, can you attribute the deletions?" "Technically, yes. Legally, I'll say this to be precise. The remote session originated from a device registered to the deputy CIO. That device connected through a VPN license billed to a consultant on Murphy Development's retainer. I've supplied the hashes and chain of custody to DOJ." The room inhaled as one body, then exhaled into the scratch of pens. Counsel pivoted. "Mr. Murphy, please approach." Ron Murphy rose from behind his attorney, jaw tight. He took the second chair at the witness table like a man sitting on a rail. The lawyer leaned to the mic. "My client declines to answer questions on the advice of counsel." The chair nodded, unsurprised. "Then we'll read exhibits into record." He gestured. Staff placed printed emails in front of Ron and the lawyer. Subject: Phase 1. Demographic Management, counsel read. From Murphy. Tourism Committee pleased with demographic management. Maintain pressure on remaining targets for Phase 2 completion. Keep the old vet out of the front rows. Optics matter. The gallery made a sound that wasn't quite a gasp, wasn't quite a growl. The microphones caught it anyway. The lawyer whispered fiercely. Ron's eyes tracked the paper. A member asked, "Mr. Murphy, what did you mean by demographic management?" The lawyer reached for the mic. Ron beat him there. "It's business," he said, voice low and hot. "You keep neighborhoods stable, investors calm. People like her." The chair's gavel hit wood. "Mr. Murphy," Ron kept going, a man walking off his map. "People like her ruin everything." His lawyer sagged back, head in his hands, the posture of a man who has finally seen the hole at the bottom of the story. The sound in the room changed. No booing, no chant. Applause rose, sure and clean, but it didn't go to anger. It went to restraint, the memory of the slap, the dignity afterward, the line Carrie drew and never crossed. The chair brought the room back with the kind of authority microphones respect. "Order. We will maintain order." He turned to Carrie again. "Ms. Stutzman, one final question. What do you want from this proceeding?" Carrie folded her hands. "Not vengeance," she said. "I want the truth to travel, and the money to go where we said we'd send it. To roofs and radiators and keys in the right hands. I want young Marines to see an old one hold a line and know they can, too." The chair nodded once, the way you do when something true lands where it should. He glanced to the clerk. The clerk nodded back. Messages received, paperwork ready. "Before we adjourn," the chair said, "on advice of counsel and pursuant to warrants returned this morning, the committee has been informed that the U.S. Attorney has authorized multiple arrests." He read the list: the deputy CIO, The consultant paid through the nonprofit. The procurement officer who signed the variance. A councilman who'd laundered votes through a committee. A fixer whose business card had never said fixer. And Mr. Murphy, the chair finished. You are hereby notified of additional charges under review, including conspiracy to defraud the United States and witness intimidation. Agents at the back stood, not dramatic, not for the cameras, just upright and ready. The lawyer whispered again, but Ron had run out of answers that did not incriminate him. Carrie rose, and the room rose with her. She didn't bow or wave. She didn't look to the cameras. She put a hand lightly on Lydia's shoulder as they passed, and nodded once to Marcus, who nodded back like soldiers do when they don't want to make it sentimental. On the sidewalk, the day was bright in the way some winter days are, cold and honest. Reporters jostled, microphones thrust like eager flowers. Ms. Stutzman, how do you feel? Someone called. Like work is finally being done, she said. A little girl on the curb lifted a cardboard sign twice her size. Respect isn't a favor. Carrie smiled at her and kept walking, a woman whose quiet had become a language the whole country could suddenly hear. The Hyatt learned a new kind of quiet. 3 months to the day, the chandeliers still threw their constellations, and the linen still answered to heat and starch. But the room carried a different weight, the kind that comes after a town decides what it is. The banner read, Unity Gala, in letters large enough to hold a promise. Beneath it, a small easel displayed the photograph that had traveled farther than any speech. Carrie Stutzman, face steady, eyes level, a slap freezing the room while she refused to bend. A quartet tuned without fuss. Volunteers moved like tide water. At the back, a table held programs bound in deep blue. On the front, Veteran of the Year, Carrie Stutzman. Carrie arrived with Mrs. Alvarez on her arm, and Mr. Patel trailing with a camera he admitted he barely knew how to use. Lydia, headset replaced by a simple bracelet, met them halfway and squeezed Carrie's hands with a gratitude that didn't need words. You were right, Lydia said. Fear's a tool, better in the right hands. Carrie smiled. Tools don't scare me. The crowd rose as she crossed the aisle, neighbors and strangers, and a few officials who had learned to speak plainly. The applause wasn't thunder. It was steadier than that, more like rain that knows exactly where it's going. On the far wall, a small plaque had been mounted where the old donor roster used to hang. In honor of those who stand still, when standing still is hard. The MC kept it clean. No grandstanding, no long introductions. He named what had happened and what had changed. He read, exactly, the line that had become a flag. Respect isn't a favor, it's a right. And then he stepped aside. Carrie took the stage. The metal ribbon lay cool across her palm, the kind of weight that reminds you of other weights. She waited for the room to settle and then, as always, chose not many words. Most of you were there the first time, she said. Or you saw it. I didn't do anything extraordinary. I decided not to break. The rest of you did the heavy lifting. She lifted the plaque once, then let it rest against the podium. I accept this on behalf of the ones who didn't have cameras when they were treated as less, and for the ones who will stand next time and deserve to be believed the first time. Someone sniffed. Someone else whispered, Amen. The quartet found a chord and held it until the room remembered how to breathe. At the final course, the MC invited a special guest, who needed no introduction because half the room had seen her on television the week everything changed. Shannon Wade took the microphone in a dark suit that carried its own kind of ceremony. She didn't approach her mother. She stood slightly off to the side, as recusal teaches and love allows. "The Department of Justice has done its work," she said. "Justice continues in its slower shoes. Tonight is about building, not only repairing." She paused just long enough for the words to seat themselves. "In that spirit, I'm announcing the Stutzman Initiative, a national fund dedicated to housing, legal aid, and mental health support for minority veterans. It begins here in Atlanta. It will not end here." Applause broke like a line of waves. People stood because some things are better understood upright. Shannon didn't look to her mother until the sound thinned. When she did, it was brief, an acknowledgement exchanged between two professionals separated by duty and welded by blood. Carrie answered with a nod that said, "Proceed, and I'm proud. And don't you dare make this about me." At the back, a modest man with a press badge lifted a camera he'd carried longer than most reporters keep jobs. He had taken the photo, the night of the slap. He bit his lip as the editor of the Atlanta Sentinel stepped to the stage to announce what the world had guessed an hour earlier. "The Pulitzer Committee informed us this afternoon," the editor said. His voice trembled and settled. "The award for breaking news photography goes to our colleague for capturing a moment that taught a country how dignity looks." A screen bloomed with the image. No caption sat beneath it. None was needed. The room rose again, less in celebration than in recognition. The photographer did not know where to put his hands. Carrie solved it by shaking one of them. On a small monitor just outside the ballroom, a local station ran a ticker along the bottom of the feed. "Murphy, sentenced, company dissolved, restitution ordered." Ron did not attend. The city had recalibrated its calendar without him. After the speeches and the chords and the careful food, people lingered. They wanted their photo, their handshake, the sentence they would tell their children. "I was there." Carrie obliged with patience and a smile that didn't perform. When the lights finally dimmed, she stood alone beneath the arch where roses used to hang and looked up into the crystal night the chandeliers made. "Ready?" Shannon asked, appearing beside her as if they were leaving a movie and had to beat traffic. "Ready," Carrie said. They didn't take the front exit. They used the side corridor with the service elevator, quicker, quieter, lived in by people who make nights like this run. In the loading bay, the air smelled like rain. Somewhere, a forklift beeped in reverse. Somewhere else, a dish broke and no one minded. The Memorial Park waited the way good ground does. Unassuming, exact. The names curved along the wall, each letter cut into stone that had learned to hold weather. A group of kids chased each other between benches, the kind of game that invents its rules as it goes. Their laughter bounded off the granite and came back softer. Carrie walked the path slowly. She did not touch the names. She let her eyes do the touching. Shannon trailed 2 paces behind, hands in pockets. A daughter again. "Do you ever think about leaving?" Shannon asked, after a time. "Every time," Carrie said. "And then I don't." A little boy stopped, recognized her, and did what children do when fame confuses them. He waved as if she were a neighbor. Carrie waved back like she was. A breeze lifted, the evening doing its end-of-shift checks. In the distance, a train sounded, the long, low note it gives to towns it intends to pass through without injury. "I used to teach recruits that dignity isn't about never being hit," Carrie said. It's about what you hand back. Shannon watched her mother watch the sky. What do you hand back tonight? The same thing I took, Carrie said. My place, they sat. The kids' game swerved around them like water finding its path. The park lights came on one by one, each a small decision in favor of sight. Somewhere across town, Marcus closed his laptop on a case marked complete and made tea he would forget to drink. Lydia answered a volunteer email with a yes. A city clerk started a resignation letter and, for once, finished it. The world didn't change. It reshaped around what had been told the truth. Carrie stood at last. The sky had taken on that dark blue honesty that comes before full night. She tipped her chin to it, the same angle as the photo, the same line she'd kept without anyone telling her to. Dignity, she said softly, is the last uniform you never take off. They didn't play the hymn loud. It wasn't that kind of ending. It came from a phone down the path, a Marine who'd set his ringtone to memory. The notes drifted thin and sure. The children kept playing. The city kept breathing. The music faded into the sound of a park doing what parks do. Holding people who need holding, keeping watch without asking for thanks. And the night finally felt reclaimed.